I want to welcome in Scott Shuttleman Phillips. Shuttleman is all you have to know, right?
Shuttleman, that's it.
And his wife Dianne. This was a labor of love, right? This book, Removed Before Flight. And we had first, I guess we talked to you when all this was beginning to come together, but you had been, and this is basically a memoir of a space shuttle team member. You take a risk here because I've read bits and pieces, and and that's how I read books. I'm sorry. I'll pick up a little bit, and then I'll read a little more and read a little more.
Yeah.
But what I have heard from various people, you do take a risk when you and memoir opens as I understand it from the experts, that opens a big can, so you have a big can to play in.
Right.
But there's enough personal in here to humanize you, but at the same time it tells the story. There's some family stuff in here. But you take that risk because you get too family. You may turn off somebody who's wanting a pure book about the space program, and it's a little bit of the feedback you've been getting is rather interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. In fact, and that's the reason why I brought my lovely wife, Dianne, because she said, show, don't tell. And I said, what do you mean? She said, don't tell people how they should feel about the book and how they should feel. You should be able to write the story, and then they'll feel that sense. Because,
and Dianne, y'all were just saying before the break, before we started, all kinds of people are viewing it different ways. When you leave things, people to kind of make up their own minds about whether they like what you said, didn't like what you said, how you treated something. Mm-hmm. You're getting all kinds of different kinds of feedback, aren't you?
We are, and we wanted the book to appeal to everyone from our middle schoolers to our grandparents. And we, working as a team and writing the book, we did a lot of negotiating. And Scott sometimes wanted to be a little more technical, and I said, we don't want to lose our readers, people who aren't technical. We want it to appeal to everyone. And I would say, all in all, the book is maybe 20% sort of technical, but not overly, but 80% a memoir, Scott's life, and starting when he was 10 years old.
Because that's the inspiring part of it, and it's very similar to we had Homer Hickman talking about the Rocket Boys and his Colwood experience and how that kind of shaped him, and he's moved on into this incredible writing experience now. Mm-hmm. But NASA allowed that for him. Yeah. NASA allowed this for you to tell this story because Removed Before Flight. Explain to people what the red ribbon Removed Before Flight is.
Well, of course,
because that's an important part of the book.
Absolutely. Just to recap the fact that 20,000 people plus worked on the space shuttle program through the years and lasted 30 years. But I had an opportunity as a 22-year-old to actually come out of STS-1, the very first shuttle that launched April 12, 1981 with Bob Crimmett and John Young. I was the last technician to exit the external tank before their flight. And, of course, we had to remove the Removed Before Flight ribbons. When I dropped out of the tank at 22 years old, the ribbon was awarded to me as being the last guy out. So I kept that ribbon, not really thinking about it ever writing a book, but I just thought that was just such a milestone. So anyhow, as years went by, the ribbon became analogous to the fact that I was removed before flight. And it is the number one engineered item in the aerospace industry to be noticed. And it's on the cover of my book, on our book. So when you go to the bookstores, you see that ribbon. It's really a great marketing that our publisher came up with. And so we actually offer a ribbon as a bookmark, as a artifact, which makes the book even a little bit more. So if we're competing with Amazon or whatever, they're lowering prices, we can actually maintain our book because we're offering the free bookmark.
What has shocked you guys about this the most?
Okay, what shocked us? The people are thanking us for writing the book. I went down to the Kennedy Space Center And of course, people, were laid off. People had 20, 25 years in with the shuttle program. Of course, the program was decommissioned, and a lot of these people were thrown out on the street. So they were very distressed that they didn't have a legacy to leave. They weren't ready to leave. But,
so this has become part of that.
Right. They actually have attached themselves to Remove Before Flight.
And you guys are going to some interesting places. I want to get to that next.
Great.
Scott Shuttleman and Dianne Phillips. We'll just kind of do it all that way.
All right.
We've got to get Shuttleman in there. Anyway, they're with us for the hour. Remove Before Flight's the book. More coming up on the Fred Holland Morning Show. Scott Shuttleman Phillips and his wife Dianne joining us. Memoir of a Space... Memoir?
Yeah, memoir, yeah.
Memoir?
Yeah, memoir.
I talk for a living, can you tell?
Yeah.
Memoir of a space shuttle team member. And Michael Griffin, the NASA administrator from, 2005, 2009?
Yeah.
Wrote the review on the cover here.
Yeah, he did the review. Yeah, he actually did the foreword. Yeah.
And he's very outspoken about the space program. We've been trying to get him in. We're still working on that.
Yeah, right.
But it's a guy who's local. He ended up
he's
staying here.
Yeah, he's
coming here.
Right, he is here in Huntsville. He actually is the CEO of Schaefer Corporation. I actually had breakfast with him the other day to give him his book, and I'm actually enticing him to try to write his own book. And he said, Scott, there's just no way. He said, I just don't have that personality or time to do it.
You know what's interesting, though? You have to start, right? I was talking, this place is amazing around here. We have authors just everywhere of all kinds of works. Right. And I was interviewing somebody one time, and I said, well, when did you start the book? He said, about 35 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. And I said, whoa.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a long time to put these together.
Absolutely. Statistics show that 80% of the people, of course, 100% of the people have a book in them. 80% of the people attempt it, and 5% actually accomplish
do it.
Actually do it. Get a publisher, that is.
What has been, you and I had several discussions about Remove Before Flight, about you going on the road, and you were going to go to all the NASA centers and do all that.
Right.
But your big question was, well, I'm going to go to some of these places where nobody's ever really been involved in the space program. It's going to be interesting to see how I'm received there.
Right.
How were you received in some of those places that aren't NASA connected?
Well, the thing, I'm unique because I actually have artwork that goes along with it, and it softens the message. In other words, it inspires people. The shuttle models, and of course, the tribute goes along with it. So people, I think, are drawn to that initially,
and they learn something about it.
That they didn't, right. In fact, I try
winning some people over.
I think so, especially the young. The young in particular, people that were in high school during the Challenger situation in particular, they'll say, I remember where I was on the Challenger. So then they've grown up most of the time watching it on TV. And so I find the younger people, the older people take a sense of pride that, it was an American iconic engineering feat that made us a leader. But I find young people gravitating to it. And now the people that I actually worked with around the centers like Kennedy Space Center and in Johnson, of course, and Marshall, they, of course, know the story because they lived it. And they're thanking us. They're thanking Dianne and myself for writing it on our level, the working man's level.
You actually shared with me an encounter you had where a guy, I guess, accosted you.
Yeah.
And you said there might have been some other, it might have been a screw loose. Yeah. But you have to anticipate those people who think this is all a waste of money.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I was actually kind of rolling off of a success situation where, I thought, well, everybody's liking this. And so I approached a guy and I actually gave him a shuttle litho. And he was just sitting there by himself, drinking a cup of coffee at McDonald's. And so I just went over just to say, hey. And the guy looked at me and tore the litho up and said it was only for rich people. And he hated what NASA represented because it was taking money from the poor people. And I said,
wow.
Sir, I said, do you understand, that we're investing into the next generation's future? And of course, he used some vulgarity. I think he was mentally off his rocker, but some people just don't understand to attach themselves to something larger than themselves. And so I discount that, but it did shake me a little bit, thinking that, hey, not everybody's
on
not
board
everybody's
here.
up, and understanding. So it was a lack of knowledge on his part, and I couldn't convince him. I didn't get in the defense. I don't get in defensive mode.
But you're not going to win every
no,
one of them.
no, yeah.
And the deal is here, I think. And I've heard that too. I've been, we had all this, and you have the list of all the things that came out of NASA, and I've seen the, Velcro and all these things.
Right, yeah.
Some people say, well, it was, manufacturing would have figured it out anyway, but a lot of this stuff got practical use within the space program. A lot of the computer stuff we do now, we wouldn't have, if we hadn't modeled that stuff, we might not be doing what we're doing now as soon.
Well, hey, Fred, think of this: 5,000 years of man's recorded history, right? Mm-hmm. What would you do for 4,900 of those years? We rode horses, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Then in the last 100 years, I'm able to talk on this microphone to you. And all this stuff Scotty's got back there, the electronics, all the stuff that we take for granted.
That's evolved a couple of times as well.
That's right. And
smaller and smaller.
But then in the space program, the last 50 years, we landed a man on the moon. That's never been done before in human history. And then the last 10 years, we've seen a sunset from Mars. We live in fantastic times. I want the young people to understand the beauty of that, to attach yourself to something larger than yourself. The next 100 years is going to be spectacular in the space industry. That's just the way I look at it. And Remove Before Flight is going to be part of that.
It is. It's an interesting story from a multitude of standpoints y'all are finding out. So I want to get some more reaction from the road. Can we do that?
Oh, sure.
Remove Before Flight is available. How do they get it? How do they get the book?
Well, I tell you what, you can go to. I actually put the 3 W's in front of it, but then removebeforeflightbook.com, and you'll get a free bookmark that's actually an artifact of the actual ribbon, and then I throw a surprise inside, so when you open it up, there's a surprise inside.
A little something extra.
Yeah.
More with Scott and Dianne. It's called Remove Before Flight, and we'll chat some more about the road coming up. We've been chatting with, I guess, a little more recently, Dianne, because we met you a couple of times, I guess, a little after Scott. But this really is a collaboration, because we were just talking about the rewriting and all of that, what goes into a book. Remove Before Flight, Scott Shuttleman Phillips was a technician on the space shuttle program in particular. And basically wrote a memoir around this. But you include family and your experience, and you credit Dianne here with helping make sure that you didn't get too technical,
right? Well,
which is easy to do,
right.
At a certain level, because you go, well, this will be a cool fact. This will be a cool fact,
right.
And then some people. So as you guys have journeyed around, I want to talk about the road a little bit. As you've journeyed to these NASA centers and then other places, because you guys have been in bookstores and different venues, describe kind of the journey and again, this as you've gone on the road and gone to places. What's surprised you about all this, Dianne? As far as how what have you experienced? What memory do you take from so far, where you guys have been and what kind of people you've encountered and the reception to the book? Yeah.
The reception has been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun. We travel as a family. We homeschool our 2 boys. They're in 8th and 9th grade. And so we do this as a team. And it's been fantastic. The reception has been wonderful. We've been down to Kennedy Space Center for a book signing. And it's just people are wonderful. It's been a lot of fun. We've had several book signings here locally as well. And right now we're staying local. We're about to do quite a bit of traveling. We're planning a trip down to New Orleans, of course, the Michoud facility where the external tank
That's right.
was
you
produced.
Loaded that sucker on a barge.
That's right. For 30 years.
Sure did.
There are a lot of people in that area that are really anxious to, hear this message, and we've sold a lot of books in that area. We're planning a trip to the Northeast. We're going to the Goddard Space Flight Center, NASA headquarters. We're very excited about that trip. And of course, homeschooling, we're able to take, our children with us, which is very exciting.
Boy, you don't get that in the classroom, do you?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And they're studying American history this year, and some of the places that we'll be able to visit along with our travels in the Northeast will be amazing.
How do you do this balance? And again, I guess you said you were kind of surprised a little bit at the response of, because there is that balance of how technical, how much NASA, how much personal story, how much of that, and memoir gives you a wide breadth, I guess, of being able to tell a story. That the balance the response you're getting is the balance seems to have been pretty much dead on. Right.
I think so. We started just writing stories. That's how we started writing the book, just writing stories. We didn't just take on the whole thing. And at one point we had a lot of stories, both personal and with the shuttle program. And then we got an outline and a table of contents. We kind of put it together. We decided to weave personal experiences with the technical, because we wanted this book to appeal to everyone, people who were technical. There's a great history of the external tank program and the shuttle program in the book. It's a very, very good history, but we wove it with Scott's experiences at work and things that were going on personally as well. With our family. So people are enjoying that, I think. So people who are technical are enjoying it, and people who are not technical, there's enough personal that they're not getting bogged down with it being really technical. And we negotiated a lot about some of the technical, and Scott said, but I really need to put this in here. People want this. They want this. And I'm like, we're going to lose our reader. We'll lose the reader.
So is this the kind of co-writing a book? Is that one of those things that really tests a marriage?
It's a combination.
Nobody wants to answer.
Well, I determined it's a combination of building your house and raising teenagers at the same time. It's sort of like that. Yeah. But it is, you fall in love with the words, and of course I have a tendency to prattle on about what I accomplished, and Diane said people aren't interested in that. They just want to know how they fit in the book. Show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. So I learned that from her, so I eventually was whipped into shape, and of course I had plenty of historical documentation with the photographs. Of course, I'm a historian, so I was able to provide the photographs, of course, all the first-hand stories. So she is a genius, and I'm going to tell her right now, Diane, a happy Valentine's Day on the radio, because I just love you. You did a great job, and we are a team effort, and we will move forward with this and share it with the rest of the world, our life. So I appreciate that. I had to say that.
Aw, wow. Sweet. Oh.
I love my wife.
Yeah. In fact, tomorrow is our 21st wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Now,
congratulations.
Thank you. We thought we knew each other pretty well. This book was a 3.5-year journey for us. But I think it really bonded our relationship, the time that we spent together, and looking at our gifts and our talents, our strengths, our weaknesses. It all came out. We had to flush it all out, and there was a lot of negotiating, a lot of synergy that came out of it. So we're blessed with that experience.
I'm a history guy, so I love the history part.
Right.
But there's a knack to telling the history. You've got to tell, if we're going to educate people on the space program or anything, you've got to tell it in such a way that they can accept it. And sometimes you got to do it in little bite sizes, and you got to weave a story around it and that kind of thing.
Make it interesting.
If you don't make it interesting, the non-history person's got to grasp something from it.
Yeah, and what makes it interesting about people that write about history is some people write it, they weren't there. I was there. So there's a lot more behind the scenes that I know, and I was willing to, tell what I knew. But living the history and making history, actually, I was where I was making history, and I realized it. And so I documented as much as I could with photographs and writing down firsthand stories. So there's a difference between writing about World War II going to the library, researching and doing that, than actually being there. So I was actually there. So that really helped a lot.
Is that sometimes, and again, Dianne, you may want to answer this a little bit, the idea that it's too much information, too much experience, because you got to boil it down, right? You're taking your entire career and plug it into this book and making it interesting. Is that's almost as much of a challenge as going and researching something, because you have all this information and you got to boil it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we wrote over 100,000 words, and there's 67.5 in the book. So we lost 30,000 words in some stories. And I cried a couple times, but then I bucked up and said, it didn't really tell what we needed to tell. So when you go through the publishing world, they're going to take some things out that you fall in love with. But they distilled it down. We distilled it down to the main core of the story, and it did flow well. So I'm very pleased.
I think I remember seeing it or somewhere. You dedicate this to the thousands of people. And how many? Let's remind people how
roughly
many?
About 20,000 people in and out of the shuttle program. I actually dedicated the book to my brother Steve and my father. My dad died in 2004. And then my brother just recently passed in the last 2 years, so I dedicated it directly to them. But then thanked all the people that's caught up my vision, that did support me with my artwork and helped me, maintain that firsthand story, give me the opportunity to meet with the crews and things like that behind the scenes. I was able to do that.
So, and I want to get to that here for a minute, and we'll get into some more of that in the next segment. But your access as a technician to all these other guys, your access was your artwork.
That's right.
Because that got the attention of all these astronauts and all these other people at the other layers of this process.
Right.
That made it unique, and again led to making the book possible, right?
Absolutely, and it was very, people say I use the word serendipitous too much, but I'm going to use it here as a fact that I was challenged. Of course, as a woodworker, remember, Fred, I used to carve my mom's broomstick, so that was a passion that I had. So I incorporated my passion. So utilizing my skill to turn these shuttle models into something that was iconic, representing an art piece for their flight, really turned their tractor, and that gave me access. They loved them. I just hit the right chord with them.
You were getting contacted after this by people going, "Hey, I want one of those. I want one of those."
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
How much you want for one of those? But again, it gave you got a chance to hear their stories and how they related to your stories.
Yeah, in fact, they're calling me today. In fact, Commander Brian Duffy is getting a model built now for his 4 flights, and he wants to have continuity to his grandchildren.
We'll talk more about Remove Before Flight and how to get it. More with Scott and Dianne just ahead. We're joined by Scott Shuttleman Phillips, his wife Dianne, memoir of a space shuttle team member. It's called Remove Before Flight, and you guys are available on Amazon. You can go to your own website and get it. Dianne, we were talking during the break about getting published, and you say there's a book in everybody. And Scott, you said what? How many people have a book? How many people actually write one? And how many get?
Well, what separates everybody is their experiences. So we all bring everyone. If you're alive today, you have some experience. So everyone really has it. But 80% of people, they say statistically, want to write a book or have one underway. Only 5% actually get it to a publisher and actually get it published. So I feel very privileged that I had an opportunity to not only be able to tell the story, but to get it out.
I hear this over and over again. Right. The way you get started is you get started, right? You got to start. You got to start somewhere.
Right.
But you've learned some things you can pass on to other people who want to write.
I think, as y'all mentioned, everyone has a book in them, and you start with an idea, and you don't take on the whole thing at once. You take it in little chunks. The way we just started writing stories. We just had all these stories, and then we organized it into an outline. And we, in writing a draft, writers never ever go with their first draft. A draft, your draft could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You write
and
your
that becomes
draft.
overwhelming to people because they go, well, I'm going to write. Not only am I going to write a book, I'm going to write it 7 times.
Yeah. But you know what?
It becomes daunting, right?
And what people say, the magic is in the rewrite. Every time you take that draft and you work on it and you kind of rewrite it, and it gets better every time. Every time it gets better, and you feel that, so you don't mind doing the rewrites because you can sense that it is getting better every time. You never go with the first draft.
The traditional publisher route is not the only option now. People can self-publish, right?
Right. And that was, I always say the first year we wrote that draft. The second year we edited our manuscript, and that's one thing, always bring an editor on your team. And then the third year was the whole publishing issue. And we actually had talked about self-publishing or going with a traditional publisher. And we did a lot of research, and I can talk about that in a minute because
it's good to run that gauntlet, huh?
Yes.
Makes you better.
Yes, it does.
All right, we'll talk some more about that, and we'll talk some more about the wood carving, too, of these incredible models with Scott and Dianne.
My favorite part, yeah.
Remove Before Flight is the book. It's a memoir of a space shuttle team member, in this particular case, Scott Shuttleman Phillips, with his wife, Dianne. They put this book together. How long did it take?
It took us 3.5 years.
And you say, I want to get to the wood carving stuff before we leave the show, but I want to get back to this publishing thing. You guys went with a publisher. You didn't do the self-publishing. And why is that important? Because, again, you wrote a synopsis, and apparently that grabbed the publisher, and they called you. And why? What? Because this is an important exercise, I guess, for people who want to write. Having a publisher is just having another person making you accountable, I guess.
Right. Well, you have your manuscript. Now what do? You can go the self-publishing route. A lot of people are self-publishing for a number of reasons. You have total control over your book.
Sometimes that's a bad thing, right?
Can be, yes. Yes, you're doing it yourself, 100% yourself.
You think it's good, and maybe it's not.
Right. But you can get it out into the world a lot faster. When you go with a traditional publisher, it could take up to 1.5 years for them to actually get it in bookstores. I had read
But it's worth the wait?
Definitely worth the wait. But it's really, it's a challenge getting to a national publisher. And that's why a lot of people are self-publishing. Now, you can self-publish. Publishers like that because that means you've done all the work. You have a book.
And then they might pick it up later and go, hey.
They can still pick it up later. That is a possibility. And we had resolved to the fact that we would probably self-publish, and that was okay. About a week before we were about to do that whole thing with the layout and just doing it ourselves, which was pretty daunting. I had written a query letter, I had written a book proposal, and I had written a synopsis of the book. And a colleague of us had published with our publisher and said, well, why don't you just send it to them? We thought, well, what do we have to lose? We were already going to self-publish. Mm-hmm. And so we sent it, and it was just amazing. A week later, we received a call from the acquisition editor. They loved the genre. They loved the synopsis. They loved what they read. They wanted to publish our book.
Wow.
And so they had a fast track. We went on the fast track with them. It took about 6 months from the time we sent them our manuscript. And looking back, I thought, what were we thinking? That we could do that ourselves because you have to do the layout and deal with the printer. But they did it all for us. When you have, when you do have a publisher, they did another editing process and printed it and did all the distribution. And it was an amazing process.
I know we're not going to have time to talk much about the carvings, but you have pictures, website, people can go look at a lot of the things that you've produced.
Here again, just go to the removebeforeflightbook.com, and I have my models on there, and of course we have the book for sale on it also. So, but if you get a model, you also get a book for free. I'll just throw the book in for the price of the model.
And these models are becoming very popular because this you put the very various woods in these things. They're
Right.
amazing. Again, how do they find everything?
Okay, just go to www.removebeforeflightbook.com, or you can catch us on Facebook at Scott G. Phillips, and you'll have us on Facebook.
Scott, Dianne, incredible story, and keep us posted. I'm really interested in the journey as you guys get to some of these other centers.
Thanks,
Have a
Fred.
great day.
Thanks,
You do the
Fred.
same. Thank you,
do the
Fred.
Same.